Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to the Winning Drive. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis, pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel, also joined by our coach, former high school football coach at Vernon, Capel, Brownwood, Belton, Rotan, also played college football at Abilene Christian, coach there as well, and was on the staff for multiple head football coaches at the University of Texas. You can catch his work at ShipleyRanches.com. It's Coach Bob Shipley, and also today being joined by the newest member of the On Texas Football family. Y'all know his work already, so I don't need to go into too much to introduce the man, the one and only Jeff Howe. What's going on, Jeff? How you doing, brother?
I'm great, Rod. Had fun on the live stream, man. I've been all over the place. So live stream last night, coffee and football this morning. CJ, Jerry, and I just recorded a spot for Junior Day on Saturday, and now here with you guys. So it's my first time working with Coach Shipley. I've covered a lot of games Coach Shipley has coached, but never been in this format with Coach. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, Coach. Trust me. I always say Coach ain't trying to coach no more based on some of the stuff he says on this show. So we end up having a lot of fun. But we'll get into, of course. Jeff just mentioned Junior Day, so there's a lot of recruiting nuggets to get to. I'm glad my man CJ Vogel's here for that. Speaking of Jeff, how there's a special happening right now. Because of the celebration of our newest member of the On Texas Football family. If you use the code HOWE, HOWE, you'll get a year subscription for just $39.95. That's right, folks, $39.95. You won't get a better deal than that for the best coverage of Texas football out there. So go check that out. That's use the code HOWE, HOWE, and you'll get a year subscription for just $39.95. And that special ends Tuesday. All right, so Tuesday is the last time you can take advantage of that great special. All right, gentlemen, got a lot to get into here on the show today. Looking ahead, we'll talk about some of the Longhorns headed to the NFL draft. Already a lot of draft analysis out there about some Longhorns, so we'll get into that. We talked about Junior Day. We'll dive into recruiting a little bit here, and I got some questions for the panel. But more importantly, your questions for the panel is what this show is all about. You throw them out there. Super chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at anytime. Also, we'll try to address as many questions and comments as we can throughout the show. There's also a report that Texas is looking to add to their coaching staff. There's a report out there as well that we can dive into that. So there's always tons to discuss here on the show. All right, let's start with a little recruiting. CJ, I'll start with you. Is there any hot topics or top headlines in the recruiting world that the Longhorns need to be made aware of?
Yeah, I think it's just who shows up to campus on Saturday. Jeff, Jerry, and I just filmed a quick 20, 25-minute update on who we're expecting in the 26 and 27 classes. Rod, I think one underlying storyline to keep an eye on at least is Peyton Houston, the 2027 quarterback, making it back to campus. We've seen the past few years, really, Sarkisian likes to get his quarterback in the class, in the fold very early, right? It was around June of last year in which KJ Lacey decided he wanted to join the 2025 class. And it took quite a while before the next commit started coming along, right? So you see Texas get their guy early. Dia Bell very much in that same boat. Does Peyton Houston become the face of 2027? It's pretty early, but he's been to campus now a handful of times dating back to this time last year. He made his campus for spring games, spring visits, pool bashes in summer, again for a game or two during the season. That's someone to keep a really close eye on, because I do think that Sarkisian, those offers at quarterback specifically, if you got an offer from Sark at quarterback, that means he'll take you, right? And he offered 3 guys. Brady Edmonds was one of them out of Huntington Beach, California. He committed up to Ohio State not too long ago. Jared Curtis recently committed to Georgia. He just reopened. Now it feels like Tennessee, a couple other SEC schools are involved there. Not much movement for Texas, so who's left? That looks to me like it's going to be Peyton Houston. So that'll be interesting. And we just filmed a quick video. So afterwards, after we're done here for the Winning Drive, go check that out because we go in pretty, I would describe it as detailed depth of who's on campus going position by position. So it should be pretty fun for everybody looking to get a little intel, a little primer before Saturday comes rolling around.
Is there a guy coming in that you're really excited about just individually that you've been keeping a special eye on, keen eye on?
That's a great question. I think one of them is Jabari Mack out of Destrehan, Louisiana. Again, I'm kind of a sucker for wide receivers that can really run, and he's one of them. I know that Texas was hoping Naeem Burrows out of the bowl school in Florida would be coming in as well. That's a guy that's probably or 10-4, 10-5 at the moment, and that's before his track season as a junior. But Jabari Mack's an interesting one because he was at A&M a week ago. He's got trips for Ohio State and LSU planned. He's a highly coveted wide receiver in Texas, as we've come to find out not too long ago. They can win these big-time wide receiver commitments now. Let's see if they can keep that train rolling, as we talked about with Ohio State, Rod. It's very important to start stacking these guys year after year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let me ask you, you guys, the panel, a question here. Let's start with you, Jeff. The Longhorns finishing, fourth overall in the final AP poll. Does that play a role in like recruiting? Do the young people, after all is said and done, and you're done with the national, done with the Final Four, national title game, in the recruiting pitch, do you even need to bring up the final ranking? I don't remember what my final ranking was. I brought it up multiple times. I was told by Jerry that it was in the top, I think it was 5 and 6 or something like that in the season in 01 and 02, somewhere around there. Is it important where you're in the season and for recruiting purposes?
I think for postseason, no. I think it helps when you can say, hey, there's back-to-back top 4 finishes. Texas hasn't had back-to-back top 4 finishes in the poll since 08-09. So I think from that standpoint, it's a tool to help. But in terms of promoting it, I know, I've heard pretty much you name a sport at the University of Texas, I've heard the coach say it. What they like, what helps recruiting is when you can start a year number 1. You're number 1 in that preseason poll. Now you can tell recruits you can really kind of play off that momentum and get a groundswell of support from a recruiting standpoint. So I don't think so, Rod, for the postseason. I think kids, they watched the Ohio State game. They saw you finish, you made it to the semifinals. You were on the cusp of getting to the national championship game. So I think that means more to kids than your final AP poll ranking. That's more for people like me and nerds like me that, file stuff away and, have it stored in the back of a file somewhere in here.
I think when Mac did not have a playoff, right, to kind of help prove how good his team was, I think maybe they did use it a little bit more. But now with the playoff, the playoff determines your legacy. That's your legacy. It's all out there for you. You made it to the Final Four. If you didn't, I don't think, people use the recruiting rankings anymore because I always said Mac Brown's legacy would look very different if there was a playoff back then.
Yeah, Mac's legacy to me was, of course, the national championship, but also the number of 10-win seasons that he had. That was huge. That was big time. I think that I agree with Jeff exactly. I don't think it's that big. The fact that you're in the playoffs and top 4, that's nice, but I don't think certainly Texas is on everybody's radar. So there's no question about that. We don't have to manufacture anything about, what polls are saying. Our proof is in what we put on the field. And so obviously I think that's what kids are looking at.
Yeah.
It probably even means less now, in the world of NIL. In the MAC days, you say, hey, we've won 10 games 5 out of 6 years. Okay, you've got a consistent program, right? Now it's, okay, you're a top 12 team, but also I know that team number 18 or 25 is going to pay me something similar to what I can get from a top 4 team, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that plays into it. But coach, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but coaches certainly like to know where they're ranked at the end of the year, certainly if they have some sort of incentive, in that contract. So obviously you want to win every game, but by the end of the year, I'm sure fighting for a 3 or 4 spot, maybe someone's got a contract incentive in there.
That's a good point. But the NIL is a great point, one that didn't even dawn on me. I think that trumps everything now.
Do we think that is a trump? That's a good point. Good question, Coach. Is that now? Because when I was coming out, it was like, can you help me get to the league? That was my number one thing. Like, man, you got to help me get to the league. That's my goal. That's my dream. You can help me do that, then I'm yours. I'll be a Longhorn. I'll be whatever. Mac had a good sales pitch with that. Yeah, in terms of what they had done coming from North Carolina. They kept talking about Dre Block. Dre Block was one of my favorite players, but he convinced me that, hey, I can help you achieve your NFL dreams. That was my number one priority. And after that, it was playing for championships and playing with great players. I wanted to be on a team with great players and play for championships. And then after that, it was probably, unfortunately, the degree and the academic prowess of the institution probably after that, and then the social atmosphere and the social, I would say that really the continuity, if you will, of the campus and the city and all those kind of things. But now you guys tell me, I mean, you guys are closer to it than me. Is NIL just now the number one priority for most of the kids coming out?
I think so. And I say that because, look, you never know how long your career is going to go in the NFL, right? You know, or even college even. Yeah. But I look at the news that even dropped today, right? Notre Dame starting right guard and center, Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan, they both entered the portal this morning. And they just played for a national championship game about, 72 hours ago? So I'll take the super chat at the same time. Katie35, I am the best. Thank you very much for the super chat. Well, Texas have interest in the center. Look, this was completely unbeknownst to me, right? I wasn't expecting this, but at the same time, we're talking about 4 brand new offensive linemen. We're talking about maybe moving a guard over to center or competing with what will be a redshirt freshman at center, right? You know, so I don't know. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me, but this is still kind of new to me to say, you know, Rod, to everything you just said about going to a great institution, being developed, potentially competing for a championship and going off to the NFL, to see 2 starting offensive linemen depart. A bit surprising, I would say. So, KD35, I am the best. I'll check back in on that. But right now, I'm still kind of, you know, trying to take that in as a surprise that's even the reality right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll with as far as interest in the portal, I think if Texas does, I think it'll tell you how Kyle Flood feels about the competition at center. That center position, it's hard to put into words what that position means to the offensive line. I mean, you're the de facto quarterback of the offensive line. You got to make the IDs. You're the guy that everybody looks to. And Texas had a really good one at Jake Majors, who had played a ton of football. I mean, I don't know what Jake Majors' final snap count was, but it's got to be close to 2,000 snaps, CJ, that he probably played like 1,800 snaps. I mean, it's a lot of football over a career that started for him in late 2020 and went all the way to the Ohio State game this year. So I think me personally, I would like to see Connor Robertson, Cole Hudson, and Daniel Cruz battle it out, because those are the guys Kyle Flood has invested in. But the X factor is you're breaking in a new quarterback with Arch Manning. I know Arch has starting experience, but this is the first time the team's going to be his. So how many new pieces do you want to put around him? And does he feel more comfortable with one of the centers you have? Or do you see this as a significant upgrade? I think there's a lot of variables, guys, to consider rather than, hey, player X came from school A, let's go ahead and add him. I think especially when it comes to center, guard tackle is a little bit different, but when it comes to center, you got to really, really think about what your depth chart looks like and if you really want to make that move, because it can determine the whole season for your offensive line, what you've got at that center position.
How about 3,749 snaps for Jake Majors according to PFF? Yeah, that's quite a bit to just go cold turkey into with a new center, right?
I wouldn't take the chance. I'd go after him. I would. Even if you believe you have guys who are capable, as you point out, Jeff, there's no need to take a chance at that position. That some positions you can take a chance and roll that, so you can scheme around them, things like that. You can't scheme around center. You can't scheme around it, period. So I'm honestly, if they're not making a push, I think they should. Yeah, I'm with 100%.
That is interesting. The last thing I'll add to that is, you've had such a consistent piece there. A center that is errant with snaps. That sucks for a quarterback. It throws off the rhythm, right? It's almost a turnover play waiting to happen each snap of the football. That's been a consistent. I can't name the last time that Texas had a quarterback running backwards to chase after a snap, whether it be by timing, whether it be because it hit a crossing jet motion guy, whether it just be, just not in the right area. That's a very underrated quality to have as a center. And Texas was fortunate with Jake Major. So to the point, who might that next guy be? We'll have to see.
Yep. That's good stuff there. All right. Before we move on, let's thank one of our sponsors. Thank our friends over at Duck Camp as well right now for being a sponsor of the Winning Drive. Duck Camp produces premium outdoor goods for the outdoor spirit in each and every one of us. Duck Camp is dedicated to providing the best outdoor goods so you can outdoor good, whether you're an avid hunter or you prefer fishing or you're like me and you just love the Duck Camp gear. You love the high quality material that it's made of. You also love how fashionable the Duck Camp gear is. Go check it out at duckcamp.com. It's a brand that understands the culture of outdoor living and the good times and good friends that come along with living an outdoor lifestyle. That's duckcamp.com. They do have a color really close to burnt orange. Every time I wear it, people think I'm wearing some Texas gear. So it's really close. As close as you can get without getting a cease and desist letter from the University of Texas. So appreciate our friends over at duckcamp.com for being a sponsor of the Winning Drive and being a part of the On Texas football family. Thank you very much. All right, before we get to some of the questions and a couple of the topics, guys, let me just ask. I got a question for you guys because I was looking at some mock drafts. I'm a mock slut, so I'll look at any mock draft. And mock drafts I'm looking at now, pretty much now the trend is Kelvin Banks is like trending toward being the only first-round pick, like for sure first-round pick in every mock draft you see. Every now and then we've seen some other guys sprinkled, Jadae Barron sprinkled in there, maybe a Matthew Golden sprinkled in there, but actually that's few and far between. So it's a question I have. Who's the second Longhorn drafted behind Kelvin Banks? Because he's definitely going to be the first. Who's the second? And are we talking about a second in the second?
I feel like it's going to be either Matthew Golden or Cam Williams. Yeah. And I say that, Coach Shipley, I know you can speak to this just from being, around college staffs. When you find guys that can legitimately play tackle, there's a lot of guys that have to play tackle for their high school team because they're the best lineman. But when you find a guy like Cam Williams that is legitimately an NFL tackle, I think Cam is going to have to just bomb the combine something fierce to not be taken in the second round. Coach, I just think
Laramie Tunsil, pull Laramie Tunsil or something like that.
Hey, I think Cam has more honor than to have bong mask pictures leaked the night of the draft. But no, Coach, I just think there's stuff you can't coach. You can't coach size, and you can't coach all the intangibles he brings to the table. I think as much as valuable as the quarterback position is, and as much as teams are hurting to find true legitimate tackles, I think unless he just has a terrible combine that I don't foresee happening, I think Cam Williams will be the second guy taken.
Yeah, that's interesting, and you bring up a lot of good points, Jeff. But then you're sitting out there with a Thorpe Award winner.
Hey,
how is that guy not going to be first round? I mean, to me, I don't know. And Matthew Golden is, Jackson. They allow Letterman to go watch practice, and Jackson went and watched practice in training camp. And he said Matthew Golden is the most complete receiver I've seen at Texas in a long time. Wow. He said he is the best route runner. The little things that he does separate him from everybody else. And I'm like, man, really? And man, he was right. I mean, I think he wound up being, a great receiver for us. And I would like to see him slip in the first round. I jumped to the first round. I don't know if he can or not, but outside of lineman, I would say Barron is who I hope has a chance to get taken in the first round, and I think deserves it because he can play. He's versatile.
I agree with that, Coach. He played in a position back then.
That's great.
Oh, Clinton. I do think Makuba should be first round. Physically, I don't know about the Sean Taylor comparison, but mentality, I don't disagree with that. The dude, he plays like he's like 6'3" or something like that out there. And I would say Makuba is going to rise up in his draft rankings, but I don't know if the safety is not a premium position, so I don't know if he cracks the first round there. But I'm with you. I think he's going to be a hell of a player. CJ, what are your thoughts? Who's the second player drafted behind Kelvin Banks?
Yeah, I kind of think I agree with Coach here. Look, Jadae Barron, as versatile as he proved to be over really the last 2 years for Texas, it's for NFL GMs specifically, who I think at times overthink the NFL draft. And Jeff, you put up a great article today on Kelvin Banks and where he might go in that first round. But you got to draft the best player available, right? And winning the Thorpe puts you in that elite category in my eyes of, you can play anywhere in the defense. He's proven that. You watch the tape, he'll lock him down. I think the PFF stat that we talked about earlier this offseason was in man coverage, Jahdae Barron's longest reception allowed this year was 9 yards. So, you talk about corners that have it up top. I think you just take the best player you got, and that's Jahdae Barron. What's really started to become one of the big questions for me ahead of the draft is, for the second straight year, we're going to be debating which Longhorn wide receiver goes first amongst the two. Yeah. And it got pretty close last year, right, with Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. Obviously, Worthy fell in to the first round while Mitchell kind of took a slip later on. It'll be interesting to see if this conversation flips after Isaiah Bond runs, 4.35 or something in the combine, because I do think that there's room for back and forth between the two.
Rod, I'll tell you, the fit for Jahdae Barron is going to be, I just think about the organizations that routinely just make smart draft picks.
Don't say it.
The Packers do it. The Steelers do it. The Ravens do it
all the time.
he feels Jahdae Barron feels like one of those guys that the Ravens will draft him and other teams might be like, well, we had him a little low on our board, and he ends up being, an 8-year player for them and playing for a long time in the league, and it ends up being a really good draft pick. He just seems like and I don't mean this as a knock by any means, it's a smart, safe pick to take Jahdae Barron. And that's not sexy. That doesn't draw headlines. But the teams that are routinely fighting for the Super Bowl, the teams that routinely make those smart, safe picks.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is he's not going to be a Cleveland Brown.
I don't think Jahdae has to worry about ending up in Jacksonville.
You say what you want, though. But the Detroit Lions are starting to become one of them teams. Yeah. They don't draft premium positions all the time, but the guys they draft, they hit on. Those guys are really good players as young players to inexperienced players. So I wouldn't doubt if Detroit's a team like that. But I'm with you. That's a good point. Some teams are going to overthink it, looking for the freaks of nature, and then the teams that keep winning football games because they have a really, really good blueprint as an organization. They're going to go, no, that guy's going to play 8-10 years in the league.
Yes,
that's a win. That's a win because that guy's going to play, and he can play multiple positions: corner, play safety, and play nickel for you. Mine is, oh man, that's tough. I'm gonna go with Jahdae Barron as it. I could see the Cam Williams things, of course, just because he's a physical freak. But man, the film doesn't look great for Cam Williams all the time. They're flashes, but it's not a consistency. Man, Jahdae is so damn consistent. I just don't remember. He's got like 4 bad plays the whole season. Yeah. I think I can remember like the 3 bad plays he had all year. It was like 1 versus Kentucky where he was out of position, but it ain't many. It's like you can count them on one hand. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with Jahdae. I'm a DB, so I'm gonna go with Jahdae Barron. Well, last time a Thorpe Award winner was taken in the first round was 2019. They don't have it all the time.
To Jeff's point, offensive lineman is a priority for every team. It's the one position that the draft is so important because they miss on so many of those guys. And there's just not that many consistent guys around, like Jeff said, that have the intangibles. And so I hadn't been thinking in those terms, Jeff, but I think you made a good point, and it's something that true tackles are hard to find, really hard to find in the league.
And you would want to get Cam. What's it more? Also add to Jeff's point, because of that premium positions, and you got to pay those guys so much money. You'd rather you can take the chance on a developmental project who's got all the tangibles and the measurables that early and say, no, I'll develop them to being a NFL caliber left tackle or right tackle, but I want to get them on the cheap because those guys aren't they're premium positions. They're paid like top notch positions in the league. So I'm just trying to get a discount there.
Depending on the combine's gonna be huge for him. I don't think there's any question. To your point, Rod, when you look at the back end of the first round, and as much as teams are hurting for offensive linemen, that fifth year option for your first round picks, you talk about getting guys on the cheap and having some structure in the contract. That's all for quarterback, the premium position guys. That 5th year can be huge where you can still control it a little bit and maybe keep your window open a little bit longer than it otherwise might be in terms of the salary cap.
That's a great point, Jeff. I agree with you 100%. All right. Before we move on, let's thank another sponsor here. Let's thank our friends over at South Point. Really appreciate them for being a part of the On Texas football family. Our friends over at South Point Dodge. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. South Point Dodge, Austin's automotive everything. Whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. And right now is a great opportunity for you to score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point with our friends over at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock right now, including a great selection of Ram 1500s, 2500s, and even 3500s. Like I said, whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. And right now, they have an amazing deal happening with over 50 Ram 2500s, all of them marked down with huge savings over at South Point Dodge. So you can go check out their inventory for yourself in person off of I-35 in South Austin, or you can go online, make it really easy on yourself, and go to southpointdodge.com and check out their exclusive inventory right there at southpointdodge.com. Really appreciate them for being part of the On Texas football family, and appreciate them sponsoring the winning drive today. At southpointdodge.com, Austin's automotive everything, whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. All right, let's get back to the questions. Let's get back to the questions here. Oh, matter of fact, CSM 101, thank you for the super chat. Says, I just remembered the intro Jeff used to do for Rod B. Yes, at one point, the intro will come back. People want that intro bad. I'm telling you, Jeff. They love that intro you did, brother. That's how you know you made an impression on people with the intro, because we've gotten, what, like, I've been on with you twice already. I think we've gotten 4 to 5 requests for the intro already. Crazy.
Longhorn Blitz was something that myself and Rod and Matt Butler did. It was really Matt and I, and then Rod was just the guest that never left and stayed there for a decade. But
pretty much,
it was just 3 guys chopping it up. We had no script, no format. It's pretty cool to know that something that was just something we like doing for fun one day a week got so many Texas fans through a not so memorable portion and some not so memorable years of football. But yeah, Matt texted me today and he said, hey, whenever you get settled in, let's me and you and Rod sit down and have a conversation. So it's on the agenda. It's on the to-do list.
I like that.
What's the deal? I get no intro. If you use the code word Shipley, you can get the subscription for $79.95 a month. I don't understand that.
You got to pay extra for coaches.
You use how, and it's code. You use how, and you get it for what, $39? You use Shipley, you get it for $79.
There's a rumor, Coach. If you use Jerry as a trader as your promo code, you can get a lifetime subscription for free.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, thank you for the super chat, CSM 101. We appreciate that. How about this one from Sarah? Since we're talking about linemen, it's a good place to go. Is Hayden Connor a Swiss Army knife offensive lineman? I feel like O-line reminds me of DB. I feel like they're cross-training everybody who has the ability to cross-train. Right? Doesn't it seem that way? Or am I off here? Throw it out, Coach. I'll ask you because I know you know a little bit about line play. But I'm a DB, but it feels like all the DBs are cross training. Feels like all the O linemen are cross training, and we're starting to get some D linemen now playing multiple gaps. I just think they're now embracing multiplicity, position flex, and versatility within roster construction, but also development as well.
Well, I think you're right, and that's one thing Sark has done. We can see his blueprint every year in his recruiting, and as he's been able to have more success on the field, obviously he's having more success in recruiting. And when you look at what's going on with the versatility of the players that we get, we're getting players that are very versatile. They can play inside receiver, outside receiver. They can play corner. They can play safety. They can play nickel, offensive lineman. Unless you're just that one stud left tackle, and you're way too valuable to be training anywhere else. Especially those 3 inside guys, a center and 2 guards for sure ought to be interchangeable, because they're working together on everything anyway. The center knows what both guards are doing. The guards always obviously know what the center's doing. That's the 3 positions inside that you can interchange and cross-train guys. And then if you have a guy that's very athletic and very smart, you can train him at tackle as well. But especially those 3 inside guys, which really, I don't know, Rod, we talked about this. That was kind of the weakness of our offensive line, really. I mean, those the interior 3, not that, you can call Jake Majors a weak point, but we didn't get the push off at times when we needed. And so those are certainly positions that we need to try to upgrade.
Yeah. they're not power linemen, right? They didn't really. Their expertise in blocking wasn't in power concepts and power principles. They were more of zone blocking offensive linemen, especially in the interior. I think, Jeff, now they're hoping this new group, maybe you do add some guys who can provide more push in the middle.
Yeah, I think when you start looking at guys like Daniel Cruz, potentially at center, you start looking at Neto at left guard, DJ Campbell coming back. I don't know. Anybody that watched Trevor Gooseby should have loved what they saw. I know I did when he was in there. And then Brandon Baker, as a young guy, is going to get thrown into the mix. But you know what? He was a highly recruited kid, highly rated kid, and got to sit back and learn. It's nice that this program's at a point, guys, where Texas isn't forced to play young offensive linemen anymore. I mean, if you're a young offensive lineman playing, it's because you're that good, and maybe you just beat out that upperclassman for a spot. It's a really nice place to be. And I'll tell you what about Hayden Connor, though. I forget who asked the question. I apologize, but I can't recall a kid at Texas that did more positive things to transform his body from the time he was a high school prospect to the time he left. I mean, I'll be honest, when I saw Hayden Connor in high school, I said, man, I don't know if he's going to move well enough. I don't know how limited he's going to be. And by the time he got to campus, just looked like a completely different kid. And, you could tell this is a kid that is following the meal plan. He's following what their strength conditioning is telling him, what nutrition is telling him. So I tip my cap to Hayden Connor. That is a self-made dude, and ended up playing a lot of football, a lot of critical football for Texas.
I think the neck roll and those two black elbow pads certainly help with the look there. But no, Jeff, I think you're right. And I think you could also throw Hayden Connor into one of the more underappreciated Longhorns, because he started, 2.5, 3 years, and was always grading out as one of the better offensive linemen in pass protection, which I think is underrated because, look, it was one of those storylines coming into last year was, will the right side of the offensive line protect? Can they communicate? Will they get blitzed on twist stunts games, whatever you want to say? And at times that remained an issue, right? That's why you saw that ongoing rotation at times with Cole Hudson and DJ Campbell, but that was never an issue at the left side. And of course you had Kelvin Banks, who top 15 talent, but that conversation about guard never really sparked up. And of course, when Jake Majors went down a few times, it was Hayden Connor who made the bump inside. So underappreciated, but I still think that the ceiling in which Texas is hoping to attain at the offensive line could be higher, with a new set of guys. So we'll see.
Coach Shipley, I know CJ's talking in jest about, the elbow pads and the neck roll. I know in your time coaching, you had to have a couple kids that without your permission raided that equipment room and like, why, son, you didn't have a cowboy collar 2 days ago. Why do you have one now? We didn't approve that.
Yeah, no. My prima donnas I had, the problem was they're in the equipment room, but they're trying to get more sweatbands and more. Who can get the most Nike swooshes on their arms? So that's what they weren't. My big guys. I don't know that I ever had an offensive guy wearing a neck roll in modern history, but and back in the day we all had those foam arm pads and.
Man.
We were sissies, man.
Yeah, just looking ugly out there too. Just not even, just no fashion sense at all. But hey, it's all about being pragmatic, getting the job done. Hey, Cisco here adds to the conversation saying Hayden Connor on third and Longhorn said that a name we need to keep an eye on is Nate Kibble. Thoughts? I want to say Jerry's mentioned him a couple of times, like keep an eye out for this young man. And I know Jerry's also big on Daniel Cruz, the young man who came out playing. He actually never played center really until his senior year, and now he's projected to be a center for Longhorns. He's got a nasty style about him too, and I just wonder, are those some of the young guys that could surprise? If you get a young guy to surprise, a Kibble or a Daniel Cruz, oh man, and these other guys actually, the guys that Texas counting on, you just brought up the Gooseby, Brandon Bakers, and your Netos, and those guys, those guys actually end up meeting expectations, and then you get the young guys to surprise, then you might have something to work with on your hands. You might have a rotation, potentially 6-7 guys that you can depend on and try to get your best 5 out there. Yeah. Best 5, period. And we don't know how that's going to look, but the best 5 out there on the offside. And I think that's the goal. That's why you cross-train these guys anyway.
I think in a perfect world, to Coach's point just a minute ago, I think I've heard any offensive line coach at the college level. I've heard you talk about 8. You'd like to have 8 in a perfect world, and very few teams have a perfect world. But you like to have your starting 5. You'd like to have one guy who's a center guard. He could come in and play center guard. You'd like to have one guy who's your number 3 tackle, and then ideally one guy who can just swing wherever you can put him. Now, most teams, if you've got 6, you're in pretty good shape. If you got 7, you're doing really well. If you do have 8, then you've probably got the 2005 Texas offensive line. So it's that's when you're riding high on the hog. But yeah, it goes back to cross training, Rod, and I like the fact that we're seeing it in the secondary now, and guys are talking about it in the secondary. You might have recruited that guy you might have recruited thinking, hey, this guy's going to fit really well at nickel. Well, you might have thought he projected at nickel, but maybe he's just a really good middle field safety. Rod, you and I had the conversation for years, and you remember me dying on this hill. Like I wanted to see Deshaun Jameson get some work at safety because I just felt like his skill set, the instincts, if he'd have played safety, I think that would have been so beneficial for his career, but we didn't see it. But now that we're seeing cross training, you're looking for position flex. It's a positive. We used to call them tweeners, and it used to be a negative. Now you call it position flex, and it's a positive. So guys cross training, it's just about maximizing depth with what you got and making sure, hey, if we have an injury or somebody gets sick or bust the shoelace, whatever it is, we need to get somebody in there. We want to make sure that we've got the best possible combination, especially on the offensive line at all times.
Yeah, it helped with Texas this year with Gooseby. Got it cross-trained at both tackles, and you needed them. And ask Ohio State how important it is. They lost 2 starters and had to move guys around that offensive line who were cross-trained, and they ended up winning a national title. So it's important, man. No doubt about that. Good stuff there, guys. All right, let's get back to the questions here. MJF wants to know, do you feel better about the running back room or the D tackle room?
Oh,
CJ, I'll throw that one to you. Running back room or D tackle room right now? That is good.
I feel better about the running back room because I know that I have a lot of bodies there, right? And they're still going to be young, but hey, if Trey Wisner returns at least, right, and I'm not speculating that he's not, but if he's back in your room for 2025, you have a baseline of 1,000-yard rusher for this year.
It's fair.
I think that you have some solid pieces in the defensive line room, but unless it's Cole Brevard continuing to be Cole Brevard and, Travis Shaw making a step or Alex January making a step, you don't have that baseline, right? I think, and that's at least kind of that thought process for me is I know if you hold serve from 2024 to 2025 with those 2 positions, you got a 1,000-yard rusher at the very least. You still got a work in progress on the defensive line. Anything that you get from CJ Baxter, right, is going to be found money, especially when you consider he was a 5-star guy who was expected, did start, that season opener in 2023. He was the first running back out on the field. So if he's back to full health, and again, we'll see how that timeline kind of lines up to the start of the season, but at least you got some sort of floor, which is not a bad thing at all. So I feel better about the running back spot right now than I do defensive line. Too many unknowns.
That's a good point. Yeah. Actually, yeah, if knock on wood, the guys can stay relatively healthy at running back, you should have some depth there. And like you said, it'll be proven depth there at the running back position.
Right.
D tackle, I think you're going to need a guy like Alex January to really, you need to expedite his development. I like him, by the way. And the coaches like him too, because he played this year. So they liked him because they had depth at D tackle. But for them to play him in critical games, they like him. And I think they're trying to speed up his development because they need him. They're gonna need him, no doubt. All right, let's get back to the question. Thank you guys for the questions. How about this one from David? I guess we're going to a little NFL discussion. Who y'all got in the Super Bowl? I got Commanders versus the Chiefs. I got Chiefs and Eagles again. That's where I'm going. I know I'm going Chiefs, Eagles. What about y'all?
As a fan of the Dallas Football Cowboys, my heart will not let me take a rooting interest in an NFC Championship game between Washington and Philly. So I'm rooting for whoever wins the AFC Championship game will be my team. I will bandwagon that team to beat whichever NFC East team comes out of the NFC.
I'm the exact same way. Another incentive for me is I've got futures on both of the AFC teams. So AFC, it can't be an NFC East team. It just can't be.
Good point. Coach, what about you? You got any rooting interests? Who's going to be in the Super Bowl in your opinion?
I tell you what, I'm kind of like the Eagles and the Chiefs. I mean, they're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, now yeah, right. No, I mean, I will say this too, though. It is the Washington story is a cool story. Washington story is a great story. You got the greatest rookie season for a quarterback in the history of the NFL in Jane Daniels, and he is legit. I mean, that dude might be in a conversation to be a top 5 quarterback right now. That's crazy, but go look at the stats. He has been that good. But what I love about is Dan Quinn. It kind of makes a Sark connection here. Dan Quinn is one of my favorite defensive minds in the NFL because of how progressive he is. But he's one of the few defensive minds that knows how to hire really good offensive coaches. Think about his head coach, his offensive coaches he's hired. He's had Sark, he's had Shanahan, and he's had Cliff Kingsbury. I want to say he may have one more in there somewhere else too. After Sark leaves, maybe there's somebody else throwing it up. But that's a really good. That's a good group. One guy, Andy Reid, calls a genius, which is Cliff Kingsbury. Sark's one of the most respected creative minds offensively in football. Period. And enough said about my boy Kyle Shanahan. So that's what I like about Dan Quinn, though. Guy knows how to he knows how to coach. Knows how to pick offensive coaches. That's for sure. All right, thank you for the question, David. Appreciate that. CB, my man CB says Sark hiring a new coach. Okay, so for those who have not heard this story, and like I said, we don't know all the details on it, but it was reported earlier today by Chip Brown. He said he was told that Steve Sarkisian has interviewed an assistant from Ohio State as a possible addition to the Longhorns staff. So we don't know a ton of details. I mean, I'm assuming that could be an assistant position coach of some kind. I remember they had Scott Hazelton in last year, just coaching Nichols, actually. So it could be maybe somebody to fill that kind of role. What do they need? If Sark's looking for assistant position coach, what do you guys think they need? What should they be getting for Ohio State?
I would double down on helping out my defensive tackle room. Not that Kenny Baker didn't have a great year, but I've got to look at, just like we talked about it, Rod, that it was going to be a big year for Blake Gideon and Terry Joseph just because of the way the secondary ended the year. Well, it's going to be a big year for Kenny Baker because, now you've got a couple transfers and some young guys. I want to give my defensive tackles coach, who I think is really good, I want to give him as much support as possible. And when you look at that Ohio State staff, whoever is, let's say it's an assistant D-line coach, learning under Larry Johnson, being at the knee of Larry Johnson, under that learning tree, a guy that coached defensive line at a high level for a long time, I don't think that's a bad way to go.
That's a spot. Special teams has to be a spot. There's just too much turbulence in it this year, whether it be not being prepared for a fake, in key situations, kicker, punter. I don't really need to go down that route because I think we're all thinking the same thing, that play has to improve. But there were too many blocking the backs. There were too many holdings on returns. Texas started too often inside its own 12-yard line on returns, and whether that be because of a holding, a penalty, ill-advised, return out of the end zone, that's got to improve, right? Those yards stack up year after year. And as we saw, kicks can win or lose your football games. And that to me has got to be a spot that's addressed again. One other thing I'd like to see, look, I thought Texas bringing in like a guy like Paul Christ was a good move right on the offensive line. I'm not saying that there's someone of his caliber out there that's just willy-nilly ready to come take an analyst job, but if you can find an offensive line guy to bring some inside zone, some outside zone, some counter ideas to a brand new offensive line, I think that would be helpful as well.
Coach, let me ask you this: when I know there's differences between putting together a high school staff and a college staff, and you need coaches that might have a certain certification to teach a certain subject or what have you. But was there one trait you looked for in assistant coaches when you're sitting down doing an interview? You felt like, hey, if he's going to be on my staff, he's got to be able to do this, or he's got to have this.
Well, first of all, I mean, it is different. In high school, the number one thing I looked for was a coach of character who's never going to embarrass you or your program or your school. You don't have to worry about him after hours. I mean, you don't have to worry about him hitting kids or whatever. That was always my number one thing. And then after that, I look for people who I love people who could bring ideas to the table. And there's some coaches, unfortunately, they want to be the smartest guy in the room. I never was, never have been, never will be the smartest guy in the room when it comes to football, but I'm going to have a staff full of guys that we can put together ideas, and I will make the final decision. But I want guys who think outside the box, realistically. Some people will come in and they'll have, I've had a guy on my staff, he had a playbook like 5 inches thick, and I want to show you this. Yeah, that doesn't make any difference. You have great stuff. What can you teach those kids? Yep. This is way too much. And so, but I do look for guys that are innovative, outside the box thinkers, that are always football junkies, always watching film, always talking ball with anybody they can get a chance to. Those are the kind of people that I wanted to hire. But to go back to the original question, I'm with you, CJ. Your last point was with the offensive line. I mean, that's 5 spots, and I know Coach Flood has some help, but it would be great to have a guy to come in and maybe give us some fresh ideas, maybe just a coaching. There are some coaches that just have a way of putting what they're trying to get across in ways that kids can easily understand it. Like I said, it doesn't matter how much you know. It matters what you can get them to learn and what they can buy into. And so great communicators is probably the last trait, that I look for. And I think that's what I would love to see. The special teams, obviously, we need some help in the special teams just because of the inconsistency. And it's just a lot for a guy to have to take care of the tight ends and the special teams as well, although he had plenty of help. But a full-time special team guy to help him, I think, would go a long way as well.
That's good stuff. Good stuff, guys. Let's get to another question here. This is from Sarah. Ask you another one. How is Baxter's rehab going? I don't know. Have we gotten any updates, CJ, on CJ Baxter's rehab and how it's going?
It's on schedule as far as I know. He's out of the brace, out of the crutches. He was walking around the Cotton Bowl with his teammates before the game against Ohio State. He's been a part of practice sessions as much as he can. Obviously, he's not participating, but he's around and helping the running back room. That's one thing with CJ Baxter is that he's never going to be absent from the team. He's just that team-oriented guy that you want in your locker room. As far as I know, and again, his injury occurred in August. So if you have that typical 9-month recovery, that would set him up for what I believe to be a May green light, going into June for summer conditioning. That would be best case in my eyes. He's not going to participate in spring football at the moment. That's the expectation. But if you can get him towards the back half of summer conditioning and then a full green light ahead for fall camp next year, that would be a really positive note for the Longhorns.
I think he and Derek Williams both. I would just, there's no reason to rush those guys back because at both positions, running back and safety, you got plenty of young guys that can use those reps this spring. You think about it, especially running back. We talk about Wisner and we talk about Jarrett Gibson. Don't forget James Simon and Ricky Stewart are both going to be going through spring practice. Xavier Filsaime, Jordan Johnson-Rebel, you got, Jelani McDonald stepping into a starting role. You've got a lot of guys in that safety room that can use the reps. So, yeah, I don't think there's a need to rush either of those guys back. Just let the rehab come and kind of see where those guys are. Just hope that they're ready for typically, a preseason ACL or kind of I guess Derek Williams more middle of the season, but typically that's kind of the benchmark. You want those guys, if they can be ready to go by the time you get to summer conditioning, it's usually a really good sign that the rehab is either on schedule or ahead of schedule.
All right, good stuff, guys. Let's thank another sponsor before we move on. Thank our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery. That's right, folks. We are big fans of Flat Creek, and you will be too. You try their fantastic wine, and trust me, you'll be bragging about it like I am. I love me some Flat Creek Estate wine. My mom loves it. My mother-in-law loves it. My wife's a big fan of it now, and you will be too. They had the most awarded wine in Texas, and it's actually really close to Austin, Texas, folks. That's right, Flat Creek Estate Winery, just minutes from downtown Austin. And they've won award after award. This year, for their vintage wine Super Texan. Super Texan is now available at your local Specs. I actually saw it as well at your local Central Market here in Austin, doing some shopping there. So the good word is indeed getting out about Flat Creek Estate Winery. Of course, Flat Creek not just producing some of the best and premium wines on the market, is also a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. It's perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with that very special significant other. So reach out to them today at flatcreekestate.com. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery. We appreciate them very much for being a sponsor of the Winning Drive and being a member of the On Texas football family. That's flatcreekestate.com. All right, let's get back to the questions. To this point, you just brought up James Simon, Jeff, and Drew says James Simon and Lance Jackson are going to be huge this season. Yeah, Lance Jackson, he is huge. Lance Jackson is the example that because I've said this about Alfred Collins a lot. Matter of fact, we'll talk about Alfred Collins here in just a second because I saw a tweet from Matt Miller about him. But when you recruit a D lineman with those types of measurables and with that kind of frame, they should be guys that can play multiple shades and multiple gaps for you up front. I know he projects as an edge rusher, but that's a guy you should be able to bump in size situationally, depending on the matchup against a certain team. That guy should be able to move around and hunt matchups. That's what I see when I see a guy like Lance Jackson. It's just unbelievable to have that kind of frame as a freshman. That's scary, man. That's scary.
The thing I like about him too, we talked about this on Coffee and Football this morning. Multi-sport guys. Yeah. Jerry was bringing up, hey, when a guy plays multiple positions in high school, how much better can he be when he focuses, all his time, effort, and energy on one position? Well, you got a guy, Lance Jackson's a baseball player too. So now, as we know, some of the muscles you're working and some of the training is a little bit different from football to baseball. But now when all that energy and effort's focused on just football, how much can that frame fill out? I said, Rod, just at the Cotton Bowl is the first time I've been able to stand next to Lance Jackson. If you were running an odd front defense, recruiting like 5 technique defensive linemen, like he'd be at the top of your board, no question. But even in this defense, like you said, you can have him at edge, and then if you want a speed package, you can bump him inside situationally, just move him around. I love that option. But I'll tell you, man, CJ, I think you heard me talk about this. And we probably talked about this last night too on the live stream. Justice Terry, you talk about a guy that's got a presence about him. Mm-hmm. The benchmark in terms of presence for me is Myles Garrett, right? Like when you walk in a room, even Myles Garrett at 16, 17 years old, you're like, I don't need to see him play a down of football to know that's a dude right there. He's like a grown man at 16 years old. That's the vibe I got from Justice Terry. Like, hey, I've never seen him play a snap of football in person, but I can tell that's a guy just by the way he carries himself, just by the way his body looks.
Yeah, he had that picture. Didn't he have that picture when he was like 15?
Yeah.
That went viral, just him like just looking swole, like grown man swole. And people thought, oh, he must be getting a scholarship. Like, no, it's a freshman, dude. It's a freshman. Yeah, he's one of them. I agree. Like they're built different. And I think the Texas, some of the D linemen they're getting in are starting to look, they're just built different. They're not having to develop into these. We talked about how you like that, Hayden Conner developed into that body when you first saw him. He's like, I don't know if he's going to, I don't know if that guy has an NFL ceiling. Oh, I think Matthew found the picture. Look at that. That is like, that's crazy. Ain't he like 15 in this picture or something like that? 15, 16 or something?
I think it was after his 8th grade year. Can you imagine your kid lining up for his 2nd year of padded practice in middle school?
I would probably remove him from there. I'd be like, I'd go to the coach and be like, man, no, take my kid out. I don't want him going up against that dude, man.
He sprained an ankle.
It looks like Terry Crews at 13 years old.
I wonder how many dudes he put in cross country from football.
Exactly. I can't have my son playing against, because my son gonna want to quit football and hate the game after playing against that dude. Man, that is wild. I do feel like I'm like, there is some high school kid that had to cover like Jeremiah Smith last year though. Like that ain't fair. Like that ain't cool at all. Like how the hell does that happen?
I remember watching, I watched Coach Shipley's Burn It teams a lot, went to a lot of those playoff games. And I remember watching kids from Somerset, trying to run with Jordan and thinking, man, this just ain't fair. I remember playing this day, threw him a bubble screen and there's 4 guys around him and nobody laid a hand on him. I'm like, there are 4 guys right there. How did nobody touch him? And he just kind of weaved through and scored. And man, there's just some guys that are just they're a cut above.
Amen to that, brother. We all know that. All right, let's before we move on, I do have to thank another one of our not thank a sponsor, but I have to bring up this announcement. So, folks out there, if you are trying to get to a Texas men's basketball game, there's a great ticket giveaway by my man Adam Lowy. At Lowy Law Firm. All right, check out at Lowy Law Firm. That's LOEWY Law Firm. All right, on the I'll say in the Twitterverse, but it's not Twitter anymore. I sound old. On X, all right, at Lowy Law Firm. And he says this, at Lowy Law Firm, at Texas men's basketball ticket giveaway. He's giving away 20 tickets for the Aggie game on Saturday. 20 tickets for the Aggie game on Saturday. He said 1:30. 10 winners are going to get 2 tickets each. The winners will be announced tomorrow a.m. And it says all you have to do to participate. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Matthew. That's why you're the man. He said to participate, all you have to do is let him know and list your favorite Aggie loss on the thread below the tweet. And then I imagine they'll pick the best ones, and then you could potentially win a pair of tickets to go see the Longhorns versus the Aggies Saturday at 1:30. So thank you to the Lowy Law Firm. Thank you to Adam Lowy. We appreciate him giving away some tickets, man, to the Texas men's basketball game. It's pretty cool. All right, let's get back to the questions here. Daniel says, CJ, is Ryan Niblett back to wide receiver full time? That is a good question.
It's a really good question. I guess we'll see whenever they get back going with football, activities here soon. He was moved full time to running back purely out of necessity due to 3 season-ending injuries. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that before. But as you kind of flip the script to this upcoming season, look, Texas kind of light in wide receiver room, right? Not in terms of talent or bodies, but in terms of guys who have played snaps at Texas, right? You only have 2 guys with receptions on the roster. So I do think a move back to wide receiver is going to be in the cards. How soon will that be? We'll see, of course, whenever they get ready for spring football. I still think, and this kind of carries on the conversation, Texas is looking for a veteran, one and done, maybe speedster guy out of the portal at wide receiver as well. That'll be something that I think arrives later on in the spring window.
Speaking of the spring, and there'll be a spring portal as well. Spanish Steve wants to know, what positions do you guys see Sark and company going after in the portal after spring ball? There's no denying there will be attrition. Welcome, Jeff Hookham. Thank you, Spanish Steve. We appreciate that. I'll throw it right to Jeff. What positions do you guys see Sark and company going after in the portal after spring ball?
Interior D-line, and more interior D-line.
Same as last year then.
Yeah, if you can find the experience and guys that can play. Now, you're not just taking somebody just to take somebody, but if you can find guys that can play, yeah, you need to be all over them. And kind of going back to the center conversation, if nothing works out with if you choose not to pursue, either the Notre Dame options, and you decide, hey, maybe we need a portal interior guy. Well, that's an area you can target. Like CJ said, maybe that one wide receiver. So it's good. It's good that Texas is in a spot to continue to use the portal to supplement your roster. You're not using the portal to build your roster.
I'm going to say tight end. I agree with Jeff. You can't pass up a defensive line, but you can't pass up a tight end that has proven himself. I would definitely be on the lookout. I might have already tried to find one. Maybe they are.
No, he's right. You got no experience returning at the tight end position. Coach is right. I mean, you got nothing there. And this is the first time Sark has had a room this inexperienced. When he first got here, he had Cade Brewer and Jared Wiley, 2 guys that were experienced, and one guy ended up playing in the league. And you had Helm and JT, both NFL guys, had those guys for 2 years. Last year was Juan Davis and Helm with a breakout season from Gunnar Helm. So Coach is right about that tight end position. Mm-hmm. Hey, speaking of, so we're talking about Gunnar Helm here. I was talking to a friend of mine about this. I wanted to ask you guys. Who's the sleeper? Who's your Gunnar Helm sleeper this year in 2025? Because I felt like in 2024 it was definitely Gunnar Helm, where basically nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw Gunnar Helm being what he was. Every now and then you'll see somebody go, "Hey, watch out for this guy. This guy's gonna be great. Watch out for this guy." I didn't hear what. Maybe Gunnar Helm's dad, mom, and his girlfriend were saying it, but nobody else outside that family was saying Gunnar Helm's about to have one of the greatest seasons in history of tight ends at Texas. And I feel like before that, I'm talking 2023. Who was the sleeper? Was it Devondre Sweat? Was Sweat your sleeper in 2023?
So.
He kind of came out of nowhere, which is like, damn. I feel like he was kind of a, but I don't know who's a sleeper in 2025 for you guys. You got one.
Jonathan Brooks would have probably been it in 2023, Rod. Maybe
Jonathan Brooks was it. Yeah, that's one you didn't really see coming.
Livingstone feels like the easy answer to me. I know each time I bring up Livingstone, folks in the chat go, "Oh, Lovejoy boy." But look, 6'4", ran 21.7 as a junior in high school in the 200. He can run. He was dinged up his senior year, so he didn't get to play a whole lot. That ranking probably much lower than it probably should have been. That opener against San Marcos that I was able to see 2 years ago, look, he threw a touchdown, caught 2 receiving touchdowns, went for $150 and had a kickoff return. You know, that doesn't scream a guy that's 6'4" and slow and basically just a deep ball guy. He cross-trained at all 3 positions this past year. If you're looking at a starting 11 right now, I have a hard time saying someone else's name not in that starting rotation with DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo. But RW, I love Jordan Johnson-Rubel. I was actually debating him just now as well, especially if Texas starts moving bodies around at nickel, at corner, at safety. He's a guy that can do it all. Smart football player.
That's a good
I'll tell you, to put things in perspective, the 200 wasn't Jordan's race. He ran more the 100 and the relays, but he did run the 200 state meet and ran 21.6, just for reference.
Woo.
Now, of course, that's fully automatic at the state track meet, so I don't know if Parker was a wind-dated handheld time or whatever, but I'm with you, CJ. I didn't even think about him. That's a great pick for sleeper.
He's a long strider too. He's a kind of a long strider, and I didn't realize he was that tall. Get that tall. And I wonder how he looks after the spring. I'm gonna add a little bit of meat to the profile, a little muscle to the profile. I think you actually might have a really decent looking receiver there. All right, let's get back to it. Thank you guys for the questions. Tedapari1 says, at CJ Vogel and at Jeff Howe, we discussed it earlier, but we'll rehash this. Notre Dame starting center Pat Coogan and guard Rocco Spindler, who portal today. And does that mean either running backs Jeremiah Love or Kendron Young enter the portal? So basically, what are the interests that Texas would have in those 2 linemen? And do you guys think that there'll be more portal attrition for Notre Dame? It is, I think, almost unhealthy attrition, though, when you lose starters like that off the line. There's healthy attrition because everybody's got to go through it, and there's unhealthy attrition. I would say that actually classifies as unhealthy attrition, losing 2 starting linemen like that.
I would say, especially with Jeremiah Love, whatever money you've got in the collective up in South Bend probably needs to be going to your running back room like yesterday to make sure you get Jeremiah Love back.
Yeah, that's real.
I don't think that either of the offensive line decisions have any impact on the running backs' decisions. But I will say that losing Coogan and Spindler is a bit surprising to me, especially after the year that they had at Notre Dame. We'll see, because again, Texas brought in Emmanuel Pregnon after at USC for a visit. He ended up at Oregon. If Texas brought one guy in, that would at least indicate that if it's the right fit, if it's the right talent level, that they would be in the market. So I'm not going to say it's completely out of the picture, but right now it's kind of just a wait and see.
I still think, Rod, I agree with what you said. I think you set me straight earlier just on the importance. I was hammering home the importance of center, and you really hammered home the importance of not leaving it a chance. I think if Texas does kick the tires on Pat Coogan, and hey, maybe if they get him on for a visit, I think that'll tell you what they think about, hey, either they don't feel good about Cole Hudson, they like him better at guard than center, or they don't think Daniel Cruz is quite ready yet.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yep. And why would you take a chance on a position, like that? Because, that can make or wreck your season if you get it wrong. All right, good stuff there. Yeah, but I do think they should go after the center. They don't usually – that's not really Texas's MO, going after linemen in the portal, but they've had so much continuity in Sark's first few years. You had a center start 57 games. So you've had so much continuity. I don't know if they've been here before where they've had so many new faces on that O-line. All right, getting back to it, Major Alexander, thank you very much. We appreciate the super chat. If Love goes in, they better go get him. Yeah, you're right about that. That's what Jeff just said. Y'all better be ready to pony up for him because he's a special running back. How about this one from Bay Area Longhorn? He says, Coach, when are we going to start selling Shipley Ranch hats? Get the boys on it. Coach is not here right now because Coach is having some work done in his house and on the ranch. So he'll be popping in and out. But There you go. SwadeandShieldCo.com, I believe it is, right? SwadeandShieldCo.com. You can go there and you get all your Shipley Ranches hats there. Oh, so Coach already made them available to it. We appreciate you guys.
I wish Coach was here so I could tell him how dirty mine's gotten.
Boom!
Put some work in this one.
Hey man, it's a ranch hat. You're supposed to be ranching in it, man. You're supposed to get it dirty anyway. It's supposed to be clean.
Sorry, guys. My battery went out. I had to move and get it changed.
My ranching in those hats, Rod, are ranch waters.
Well said. I like that. Well said. Hey, Matthew, could you pull up the graphic about the most valuable college football programs that I sent you earlier? I saw this graphic. Paul Feinbaum, I believe, was the one that put it out there. It's really interesting because he's talking about the most valuable. I don't really know the formula, right, that the PhD, the expert here came up with to actually determine the values. But look here, it says Ohio State, defending national champion now, is the most valuable organization or program in college football. You got them at $1.95 billion. They got Texas second at $1.89 billion, Michigan third, $1.65 billion, Georgia $1.34 billion, and then LSU also here at $1.06 billion here. This is obviously these are SEC programs. You're talking about how valuable they are overall in college football. So there are some Big Ten programs that might have something to say about this. Some other Big Ten programs, I'm sure, but a lot of the SEC representatives on this list, guys. I mean, most of this list is the SEC. And I look at that top 6 there, and I can't help but think about the past 6 national champions that have all also been LSU, Georgia twice, Michigan in there. Obviously, Bama's in there, and Bama's not in the top 6 here. And also, you got Ohio State.
Yep.
Remember I showed you guys the Jim Nagy tweet from earlier this week where he claims that the last 6 national champions, including Ohio State, will have had the most players drafted in that year's draft as well. He's got 5 years in a row where the national champion has also had the most players drafted. He's predicting it'll be 6 with Ohio State, and I think he's right about that based on all the mock drafts I've seen. Just another, I think, kind of quantitative way to really measure that difference, the different level of ball that some of these programs are playing now, as opposed to the rest of college football. This is big boy football here, as big boy sports, period. But it shows you that, I mean, Texas in that rarefied group of programs that have the resources and that should be able to get the players to win national titles, because that group is starting to become more and more of it's going to separate, I should say, from the rest of college football. It seems to be the case.
You know, I remember, Rod, when Justice Terry, the day Justice Terry signed with Texas on signing day, and, you know, saw Georgia fans crying foul. Well, Texas has all this money. They got the NIL collective. It's not fair. They outbid. I said, so for so long, the casual college football fan was mocking Texas, making fun of Texas, saying, you guys got all this money and resources, and you don't know how to use them. Now you're crying foul because Texas has leadership and a coach in place that's figured out how to properly use the resources that are available to them. Now you're saying it's not fair. So I don't know. You can't win with everybody, but yeah, I love what Sark is doing, and you know, I think it's in recruiting, it's in facilities, it's in everything across the board, man. Texas has leadership, and even with President Hartzell moving on, you've got leadership and you've got a football coach that understand, hey, if we want to be serious about college football, if we want to be serious about football on the 40 acres, we got to be financially, emotionally invested and committed to being in the fight. And that's in, like I said, that's in facilities, it's in game day operations, it's in recruiting, it's in everything. You got to try to bring the best to Texas, and that's what everybody on the 40 is doing right now, and I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, I wanted to, just in case you want the actual list, I got it from Wall Street Journal here. Number 1 is Ohio State. Number 2, Texas. 3, Michigan. 4 Georgia, 5 is Notre Dame, then 6 LSU, and they got 7 is Penn State. I don't know why the graphic here doesn't show, because I think there's just an SEC lean here. 7 is Penn State, 8 Tennessee, 9 the Aggies at A&M, 11 Alabama, 12 Auburn, 13 Nebraska, 14 Florida, 15 Wisconsin, 16 Washington, 17. This is shocking, actually. Kansas. But sports programs, I think they're talking about like sports program, athletic departments, not just football. Football is, of course, the main money maker, but I think they're talking about overall athletic departments here as well. That's why Kansas, I think, jumps up in there. Then you got 18, they got Iowa, 19 Arkansas, and 20 Oregon.
No USC is surprising, I guess, but private school, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that they don't have the right enough resources to see the actual numbers. Could be that too. But I say this is Wall Street Journal, so if you're upset about it, go be upset with Wall Street Journal.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Rod, but just you rattling the teams off. Other than Kansas and Notre Dame, you got 18 of the top 20 most valuable enterprises are either Big Ten or SEC schools.
Yes.
Yeah.
Power conference.
Yep.
Let's get to it.
That's
literally to it.
I'm trying to find out when. Yeah, so I guess Notre Dame would kind of be your first. I'm trying to look at the ACC without Notre Dame. Who's your first ACC team in here? And I guess it's
had to be Clemson or North Carolina. I would think
Virginia Tech. It says on this list at 22nd. It's got Clemson at 27. It's got Florida State at 25.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know, man.
So that's why I don't. Finance is not my thing. All right. And I was always told not to do math live on air, and I would not do it on this show as well.
Hey, by the way, Brewster showed up at Florida State now. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
No. What? When that up? I just talked to Brew.
I was gonna say he was just on the channel last weekend.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
I missed that, Coach. I'm about to text Brew, man. He told me keep in touch. He's gonna get a job and not even tell his boy. Come on. It was cool than that. But congrats to Brew. You know Brew wasn't gonna stay out of work for long. He's got a skill that in the NIL world, Coach, is not as coveted as it used to be. Being an ace recruiter and a rainmaker like he was, the Ric Flair of recruiting, as I used to call him. But still, you still need a guy like that with an outgoing personality, lots of juice, lots of energy, positive vibes. And then he can talk to the people about NIL because apparently that's what they want, number one. The coach that's recruiting you doesn't matter as much. But, man, Coach Brew, in his prime before NIL, I don't know if there was a better recruiter in his prime that I've seen in modern football. I'm not joking, guys. He was just that good. VY, Chris Sims. I mean, he got all the big-time players of his day. All right. How about this one from Daniel? Outside of Sadir Mitchell, was there any player Texas lost in the portal that they really wanted to keep? Anybody lost they really, really wanted to keep?
It's a good question. I think the easy one to point to other than him might be Amari Niblack, just out of need at tight end. But, again, you kind of have to go position by position. Defensive line, maybe Jere Bledsoe, maybe an Aaron Bryant, just out of pure need of the portal right now with its numbers. But Texas didn't lose a single start out of the 10 guys that entered the portal this past year for their entire career. So, Rod, you talked about good attrition, bad attrition in the terms of the Notre Dame offensive linemen. This is good attrition in my eyes in the sense that Texas just added the number 1 recruiting class, which had the number 3 recruiting class right before that. Now you're getting to the point now where if you're not to that level of talent, your playing days probably won't be in Austin, Texas. So Amari Niblack maybe is that one for me. But again, I think he had as many penalties this year than receptions. So if he couldn't find the role as that second tight end this year, I don't know if making that leap for next year was going to be all that realistic.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff there. I'm right. I think you lost players who had a lot of upside, but you didn't lose any impact players. You brought up the great graphic there, CJ, that you put out on social media. 0 starts among those 10 players you lost. To me, that's as much as you can ask for these days. Right. You can't really ask for guys who don't have a path to play, weren't playing, and can cash in on NIL elsewhere that you can't give them to stay. That's tough. I always compare it to, I'm kind of ended on this note. I played in the NFL, played at Texas. Every now and then, guys, Rob B can pull a dime piece. I pull me a dime piece, man. I'm talking about just a straight 10. She got it all. All right. And I tell you, it ain't hard to pull a dime piece. Now, I did have the NFL, story to back me up and Texas football and all that kind of stuff. But I pulled dime pieces before. The tough thing is to keep a dime piece. It's easy. I think it's easy to pull them. That just takes you having a good night. Maybe you're feeling confident. Maybe your jokes are hitting. It's all good. You're in the zone. But to keep her happy, to keep her satisfied for 365 days, all right, all year long, that's hard because they're high maintenance. That's recruiting now. Your 4- and 5-star blue chips, you can get them. That ain't as hard as it used to be. That's NIL mostly. But can you keep them? That's what's hard to do. Yeah. So it's easy to pull a dime piece. It's hard to keep them. So retention, to me, that's becoming one of the toughest things to do in college football. How do you retain the continuity at a position when those guys aren't starting and they need to wait their turn to be developed? And not a lot of guys wouldn't do that. And I don't blame them, by the way. You can get paid to go play elsewhere when you at Texas may not be getting paid as much just to sit and develop. And I think that's for the coaches and for the personnel department for Texas, that's the conundrum. And they're doing a great job, by the way. They're doing an amazing job of it. Like I said, you lost 0 starts in the last portal. I think you'll see a little bit more attrition with maybe some more impactful players after the spring. But we'll talk about that because we got plenty of time for that. All right. Before we get out of here, remember, guys, use the promo code HOWE, HOWE. If you use that promo code, you'll get, thank you, Matthew, you'll get a year subscription to OTF for $39.95. You can't beat that price. If you're a baller on a budget, you got to appreciate that. So use the code HOWE in honor of our newest member of the On Texas football family, Jeff Howe, and you'll get that subscription for a year for $39.95. So really appreciate Jeff, and also we appreciate all of you guys for being a part of the On Texas football family. Remember, that special ends on Tuesday, all right, on next Tuesday. So you got a little while to make up your mind. All right, before we get out of here, let me thank Matthew, because Matthew is the real MVP behind the scenes. He's great, guys. Couldn't do it without him. Let me thank our sponsors as well. Thank Duck Camp, duckcamp.com, Flat Creek Estate Wine, flatcreekestate.com, and our friends over at South Point Dodge. Promo code Shipley.
$79.99 and a kick in the crotch. That's what they get.
That is great. I love that. All right. And for Coach Shipley, Coach, thanks for the levity and the wisdom. Jeff, thank you for all the knowledge, brother. CJ, thank you for all your hard work, man. Nobody does it better. And thank you to all you guys out there for watching and for listening. For Jeff, for Coach, for CJ, for Matthew. Until next time, hook 'em horns.